through a few of the exam style questions. These sort of questions were in the 2016, 2015 Year 11 Methods Unit 1 and 2 exams. So this is sort of what's expected to do in regards to differentiation, rates of change, things like that when it comes to an exam. So the first question we have here is determine dy dx, so the derivative for the equation y equals 4x to the power of 4 divided by 3. Now I'm going to rewrite this one so it becomes simply 4 on 3 x to the 4, so it's just a little bit easier to work with. Now remember that our derivative rule, our rate of change rule, our gradient function rule is the power comes out the front, multiplies by the coefficient, and then reduce the power by 1. So how that's going to look is going to become 4 times by 4 on 3 x to the 4 take 1. Then in simplifying that down, remember this here is like 4 on 1, so it just becomes 4 times 4, which is 16, and then 1 times 3, which is just 3. X 4 subtract 1 is just 3, and that is your final answer. Now remember, you can write this like this: 16x cubed on 3. Either answer is sufficient for that question. Next one I'm going to look at is a little bit trickier. It is a question that is, we need to use that knowledge of indices a little bit more and how we can make this into a function that we can determine the derivative rather a little bit more easily. So the equation is 12 divided by the square root of x. Now I want to get that into a bit easier sort of format, so I'm going to modify this and make it into 12 divided by, now remember the square root of x is the same as raising x to the power of 1/2. Now because this is on the bottom of my fraction, I can then again still change that to become 12x to the negative half. Now this is more of the sort of format that we can use with our rule of bringing the power out the front, then dividing by the new power. So I can now set up my dy by dx. I'm going to bring the power out the front. Now remember, the negative sign will stay with that. Negative 1/2 times by 12x to the negative 1/2 subtract 1. Now obviously when we get a bit better at this, we don't have to do this step every time. I'm just mapping it out like this so we can see how we get our answers. Now negative 1/2 times by 12, this is the same as negative 6, because I'm doing 1/2 of 12, negative 6, and then I have negative 1/2 subtract 1. Because that's already at a negative, this becomes x to the 1.5, but I'm going to change that into negative 6x to the, it should be negative, to the negative 3 on 2. Now the reason I've changed this into 3 on 2 is because, again, another one of our index laws tells me that I can then rearrange this to be negative 6 on x to the positive 3 on 2, because again we always want positive powers, and again 3 on 2 is the same as negative 6 on the square root of x cubed, and this would be my final answer, this one here.